Welcome back to another team selection video ahead of Double Gameweek 29, the biggest Double Gameweek of the season with 12 teams having 2 fixtures. I'll be talking about my transfer plans, my initial ones, because there could be some changes. We've still got a few weeks of the international break, and I might make a final version of this video of the team selection with my conclusive transfer plans, but I'll be discussing what I'm thinking about at the moment, my Game Week 28 performance as well, which was a bit of a frustrating week, I think, for many of us, including myself. I'll be talking about that, what we can learn going into the future, and talk about much more. So if you end up enjoying this video, be sure to drop it a like. Let's try to get this over 300, and we're looking to push on towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. So thank you very much for all your support. It's very much appreciated, and let's jump straight into this video. A few weeks ago, I said I had probably the worst defensive performance of all time, really. Everyone seems to blank. Well, this might be the week to trump all of them, because I went with a back 5 and Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal, and you're going to see how many returns I got. But Kepa Arrizabalaga with a 1-pointer, conceding twice to Everton, and despite Chelsea's season, I was still fairly confident of a clean sheet against Everton. Maybe I was being a bit naive there, but they have improved recently, and despite not great underlying numbers defensively, Kepa and the Chelsea defenders have still looked fairly organised, and it's not like their main problem is conceding goals. Their main issue is creating chances and scoring them. But has to be said, Everton showed great fighting spirit to come back twice. And despite conceding a penalty late on, they still managed to find a way to score that second. And I think there are some problems there with Chelsea. Enzo Fernandez, as good as he is, I don't think his defensive positioning really helps to protect that back 5. And honestly, I think Chelsea need to play him in a more advanced position. That's where he did his best work at River Plate and Benfica. And I think once they get their key players back, you've got Kovacic as well already assimilating into the team. When you've got Kante as well in the mix, that's where you can start to see Enzo a bit more liberated, and you can see a more balanced midfield for Chelsea and more control in games. And not only that, they'll protect their defenders better. But going forwards, I still like Chelsea defenders and Kepa Arrizabalaga, and I would still even suggest a double up potentially of Chilwell and Kepa going into Game Week 29, and even beyond that for a few more weeks. But honestly, if I had to pick one Chelsea player at all, it's going to be the same answer I said last week and the week before. I think Kepa Arrizabalaga is the best Chelsea asset. Having a good performance doesn't guarantee you FPL points, and I think Chilwell is a great example in Game Week 28. He created chances, he was lively, he was arguably Chelsea's best player, but he still only got 1 point because he conceded twice, didn't get any goals or assists, and that is maybe the beauty of FPL, but also a slight flaw in the point scoring system. But we all are used to it, and it is what we all know and love. It's traditional. But Ben Chilwell, I think those that bought him in 28, like myself, have been unlucky, but I actually feel more for those that captain him, because he was a good option this week in my opinion. Maybe not in my top 5, but he was certainly the best defender to captain when you look at all the options. It's just a shame that we had so many goals and not enough clean sheets in Game Week 28 when we probably needed it. A lot of us did play a back 5, such as myself this week, and it didn't get any better with Alexander Zinchenko, who got sobbed off straight after Arsenal concede. The transfer, or should I say the substitution, was ready to be made around the 59th minute, and I was literally thinking, okay, Zinchenko, just let's keep the ball in play, then once 60 minutes is gone, you can be subbed off, bang that clean sheet in. But the ball seemed to be in play forever until Palace scored, and then Zinchenko was subbed off in the end for Kieran Tierney. So that was very frustrating, and Zinchenko hasn't been that great overall since I got him in. His only return was against Fulham when I did bench him, of course, but I think Tierney has been a bit hard done by from Mikel Arteta, you could say, and from Arsenal. He deserves more game time, and when he came on, he not only got an assist but played very well and helped Arsenal to kill off the game and any aspirations of a Crystal Palace comeback. So I think Tierney deserves more minutes in the future. Whether he'll get them, I'm not so sure, but Zinchenko might see fewer 90-minute cameos or performances in the future. Having said that, I would expect him to start every single game when he's fit, because he plays this inverted role so well. He does have some deficiencies going defensively though, and we all know this from his time at Man City. Having said that, obviously a really good signing for Arsenal. He's done very well, but in FPL, there's still a lot to be desired there, and he has been frustrating. Then we go to Ben Mee. He also conceded, and Leicester actually have a good record against Brentford, something I didn't mention in the deadline stream, but I looked at the last 4 or 5 games, and Leicester haven't lost any of them, and it looked like Brentford would go on to win the game after going 1-0 up, but Leicester still found a way to get back into the game with Maddison and Barnes combining, and Ben Mee has been a bit disappointing, but still a decent return in Game Week 27. 27 at least, in 28 not so much, and let's see how he does in Game Week 29 against Brighton and Man United away. Those are some really tough games there for Brentford, and once again it doesn't get any better because we have Botman, who probably made his only big mistake of the season, setting up that goal for Nottingham Forest, Dennis chipping it over, and that was a really big mistake. In the end it didn't cost Newcastle. They went on to win the game towards the dying moments of that match, but Newcastle defenders have been so frustrating, and now actually, because I've always been a 2 or 3 Newcastle defenders for the whole season or going for Nick Pope in goal, now I think Trippier and Isak are the best options to go for, and then you can maybe add in someone like Botman, Fabian Schär, all these other options when they're fit as the third best Newcastle asset. Would I triple up on Newcastle right now? I definitely wouldn't, and I probably wouldn't go for a double up in Newcastle defensively. But having said all of that, that's why I had in Game Week 28 Kieran Trippier with another blank. I know he returned in Game Week 27, but he's been very inconsistent in the last few weeks, and he's definitely dispensable. He's no longer the kind of must-have asset he was for the first 20 game weeks of this season. That has definitely come to a halt, and now we can definitely make plans to go for other defenders like Estupinian, Luke Shaw, and Ben Chilwell. There won't be many times when I only have 2 midfielders in my starting 11, and both of them from the same team. Martin Odegaard has been so frustrating for me, and on the wildcard in Game Week 26, I was heavily debating going for him or Martinelli, and Martinelli has proven to be the far better option in the last 5, 6, 7 game weeks. He's been scoring so many goals, he's a serious contender for Player of the Month, and he has been absolutely fantastic with the bonus points as well, scoring some crucial goals for Arsenal, putting them ahead against Crystal Palace, and also in other games like Leicester, which ended up being the winner. With Martin Odegaard, though, the only goal he scored in recent games was against Fulham, where most people, including myself, benched him. So these Arsenal players have been very frustrating for me, and I'm looking to get rid of them in Game Week 29, just in general, not just because of the lack of points and also some frustrating points here and there on my bench, but because the lack of double game weeks, some tough games coming up, and also I think there are better options in the midfield right now compared to Martin Odegaard, and also in defence compared to Alexander Zinchenko. And the other frustrating part of my game week was Bukayo Saka. Yes, he got me 18 points, and those that didn't own him at all would have been crying this week, but the fact that I didn't captain him, I think, was a huge swing. And those that captained Chilwell, Harry Kane, or a few other options like even Ivan Toney were very unlucky this week to see such a huge swing. Before the game against Palace, Saka had only produced 2 double-digit returns this season against Everton and Liverpool. It's not like it's a common occurrence, and he's been getting a lot of 9-pointers, maybe 6, 7, 8 points as well, but 18 points is something he's never produced this season. So fair play to those of you that captain him. Crystal Palace have been looking absolutely awful, and they're in big trouble right now. Roy Hodgson will be their new manager. Let's see if he can keep them up. But Arsenal, keep on pushing. They've got some tough games coming up, and whilst I would still keep 1 or 2 Arsenal players, I'd also be happy to sell 1 or 2. And I think the kind of sweet spot in terms of how many players we should have from Arsenal until the end of the season is probably 1 or 2. I definitely wouldn't go for a triple up. Lack of double game weeks. Also, I'd say there's some tough games coming up where Arsenal could struggle, and even the likes of Saka might not get FPL points in those games. Whilst my forward line didn't reach the same heights as last week, it was still a solid outing from the likes of Harry Kane, who is Mr. Consistent. He rarely blanks, and despite maybe a lack of double-digit returns, he is still capable of getting these goals on a consistent basis. Only Haaland has scored more FPL points. There's only 20 points separating both of them, actually, just over 20, and Harry Kane is definitely the best premium in the game besides Haaland. But with the lack of doubles, and you've got the likes of Salah still entering some great form overall, you could make a debate in terms of who is the second best premium in the game from now until the end of the season. But Harry Kane facing Everton up next, that's a great fixture. We'll talk about that very soon as well. But still a decent outing against Southampton, and Spurs have been absolutely woeful. Conte could be leaving as soon as this week, and it could be Ryan Mason in charge until the end of the season. Spurs could still struggle in a lot of these games, but Harry Kane will be the one constant, scoring goals week in, week out, no matter who the manager is, and he'll get you FPL points. Now, having said all of that, he is still sellable. He is not an absolute must-have and a keep until the end of the season, but with the fixtures coming up and his consistency, I'm more than happy to have him in my side, and I think he'll do pretty well regardless of who's the manager by the time we get to Game Week 29 and any other circumstances that maybe arrive as well. Now, as for the other 2 forwards, Ivan Toney can be a troll, and facing Leicester, some people look to captain him because of how poor Leicester are defensively, and yet only 1-1 Brentford versus Leicester, and Toney didn't didn't score anything, no goals, no assists, nothing at all. And look, Tony has been rather inconsistent since the World Cup, but he is capable of these big returns, 9-pointers, even an 11-1 against Southampton too, and he's a great option until the end of the season. The big problem now, and it looks like it's always been the case for most of the season, is the suspension risk. If he gets one yellow card, he's going to be suspended for the subsequent game, so there's a big chance he gets a yellow in the first game of 29 against Brighton and is suspended against Manchester United. If that's the case, then of course Ivan Toney will be very frustrating once again in game of 29, but he's also worth keeping, as I'll talk about in other videos as well, such as the transfer tips. But it's all team dependent. You've got other forwards as well to go to, like Kai Havertz, you've got Isak, you've also got Harry Kane, Erling Haaland if you want to bring him back in, Ollie Watkins. So the choices are there for you, but I have to say Ivan Toney's still one of my favourite forwards in the game. It's just a shame that once again he's always going to be a bit of a suspension risk, and that has been the case for most of the season with so many different circumstances. The last forward is Ollie Watkins, who got an assist in a 3-0 victory over Bournemouth, and Watkins can be frustrating. He got the assist at least, he got something, but the fact that Villa scored 3 and Watkins didn't score a single goal is very frustrating. Some good games coming up though against Chelsea and Leicester. I would definitely bookmark that Leicester fixture as a really good chance for Watkins to prove himself, and he's got some decent fixtures afterwards, although I think Villa will struggle in some of those games. They should still score goals, and under Unai Emery they have the 3rd best record in the entire league, only behind Manchester City and Arsenal. A game-changing decision this week in terms of the captaincy has cost me, so I went from 78,000 in the world to 88,000. Not the biggest red arrow, and it's still a good positive green since I played the World Cup from around 140,000 in the world, but still, 49 points in game at 28. I've seen a lot of 60, 70 pointers flying around. I think the key reason for that is captaining Saka and also maybe one or two other players like an Isak or having Maddison instead of Chilwell. That decision has cost me 3 points so far, but there's still game at 29 and the rest of the season to go. Let's see how it all pans out. But FPL can sometimes do this to you. Not owning Martinelli was also another kind of big reason for my red arrow, and owning the wrong Arsenal midfielder once again in Martin Odegaard. Having said all of that, whether I had Martinelli or Odegaard, the plan would be to sell one of them in game week 29 for a double game week midfielder and also do the same in the defence. So despite Arsenal flying in the league, 6 wins in a row, the only team to do that all season, I am looking to trim it down. Facing Leeds at home up next. Just for those of you that maybe are just absolutely set on selling Odegaard, I think it is the right decision, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he did haul against Leeds. So I'm kind of expecting it now once I do confirm the transfer and sell him. But we'll talk about my transfer plans now in the next section, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What are you going to be doing for Double Game Week 29 and the rest of the season? Technically, it doesn't really matter who I start in goal because I'm going to be activating the bench boost this week. So I've got Kepa Arrizabalaga against Aston Villa and Liverpool, and the other goalkeeper, David Raya, has a double himself against Brighton and Man United. Now, if I had to pick one this week, it would be Kepa Arrizabalaga. I think he has a good chance of one clean sheet, and even against Liverpool, that game tends to be a draw between Chelsea and Liverpool, and if it was a goalless draw, that would be ideal for those of us with Chilwell, Kepa Arrizabalaga, assuming Chilwell does start, of course, in that game too. But I'm fairly confident of some returns there from the Chelsea assets, particularly in the defence, and I've also got the bench boost, so the likes of David Raya, whilst having 2 difficult games, I still think Brentford could frustrate the likes of Brighton and Man United and potentially get one clean sheet. And David Raya can get bonus points, but even if there's no clean sheet, the save points are always a possibility, so Raya could still get a decent return regardless of how many goals Brentford concede. I have 3 defensive double-ups this week, which is a bit concerning, but Ben Chilwell has the fixtures to do well, and I think my main concern would be the minutes, because he has been fairly injury-prone, and he can sometimes be rested just to ensure that he stays fit, because he's so integral to Chelsea in the long term, and Chelsea will probably be prioritising the Champions League, their only chance of a trophy this season. The Premier League's kind of done and dusted, an outside chance of the top 4, but I honestly don't see that happening. They're just far too inconsistent. Having said all of that, Kepa and Chilwell are the best Chelsea assets for me, despite Kai Havertz showing some real consistency in the last few game weeks in FPL and also across all competitions. Then we've got another defensive double up in Brentford with Ben Mee, and it might be worth taking a -4 hit. or using a free transfer especially to sell Ben Mee, but I'm probably going to keep him in the end and focus on getting rid of my single game week options, particularly the Arsenal assets like Zinchenko, and keep Ben Mee instead. I think Brentford could cause some problems, and let's not forget, despite them being a bit inconsistent away from home, they are still capable of some big results. They beat Brighton 2-0 in the reverse fixture, and also Manchester United 4-0. Now, I don't think they'll keep clean sheets in either game necessarily, but they have the capabilities of doing that, and defensively they are typically very solid and hard to beat. So I could see a draw, or maybe even 2 draws across both games, and if that's the case, then maybe Ben Mee can get something. Anything would be great. But I certainly won't be getting my hopes up after what happened in blank game week 28, starting 5 defenders, and even with my goalkeeper included, no returns whatsoever from them, and it was an absolutely disappointing week as a result. Then we go to one of the best defenders all season, Kieran Trippier, but he hasn't been in the last few game weeks, which is most important. Newcastle aren't keeping clean sheets, and only 1 return in the last 5 game weeks for Kieran Trippier, which was the assist against Wolves, which was then followed up by a mistake on his part, which led to Wolves' goal. And then in the following game week, you had Botman making the mistake against Nottingham Forest. So Newcastle have been a bit more shaky, and really you could argue Isak is the best Newcastle asset at this moment in time. That could certainly change, of course, going into the future. And despite facing Man United at home and West Ham away, I'm actually fairly confident of a clean sheet there for Newcastle. But then again, I have been for the last few weeks and it hasn't panned out. So let's see what ends up happening. Then the final defender in my starting 11 is Luke Shaw, who could be one of my new signings. It's probably going to be between him and Stupinian to come in for Zinchenko. And there are some doubts about Stupinian and whether he'll start the first game of Double Gameweek 29, and I can understand the concerns. I personally think he will, but Luke Shaw is the safer option. He's got better fixtures in 30 and 31, and Brighton and Man United blank in Gameweek 32. Let's not forget that because of the FA Cup semi-finals. But if Stupinian and Brighton get an extra double in 31, and that is confirmed before the 29 deadline, if that were to be the case, then I might go for the Ecuadorian instead. So that's something I'm yet to decide. It's between those two for that final defender slot. The one on my bench is Sven Botman, so that's 2 Newcastle defenders, 2 from Brentford, 2 from Chelsea, and then probably 1 from either Brighton or from Manchester United. So it's not certainly ideal, but then I look at all the other teams that have a double, even those that don't have a double this week with a single game week fixture, and I don't see too many clean sheets anywhere, or I don't really see too many standout fixtures where I say, yeah, that's a definite set on clean sheet. So I'm still relatively happy, but 3 defensive double ups isn't really what you want in your team structure. As we head into another international break, be aware of all these potential injuries, quote unquote, that are going to be reported for all these key assets. Marcus Rashford's already one of them. You've got Erling Haaland pulling out of the Norway squad due to a groin injury. I'd be very cynical about all of this, and honestly, I just wait until we get close to the 29 deadline before thinking anything of these potential injuries. I personally think Rashford will be fine. He's just being safe for the congested schedule for Manchester United until the end of the season, so I would think nothing of it. And after all, they're not really that important games in my opinion, and the likes of England, Norway, whatever it may be, I mean, it's not going to affect them too much in the end. And I think the priorities for these players and also for the clubs is to make sure that they're fit in time for the rest of the campaign for these really tough games for the likes of Man United and Man City. So I think nothing of Marcus Rashford. He's one of the best captaincy options as well for this double game week. He's certainly in my thoughts for the captaincy. I will have a backup plan just in case he is actually out. Of course I will. I know the midfielders I want to get for 29, which definitely include the likes of Maddison and Bruno Fernandes. But right now I'm thinking nothing of it, and I think Rashford will be fine for the double game week coming up. Then we have Mitoma, and the double ups don't stop there. I know I have a lot in the defence. I've also got 1 in the midfield with Mitoma, with 2 good games I think from an offensive point of view, and Solly March, and I think these 2 could be great captaincy options as well. I'd slightly favour Mitoma, who was a bit poor actually against Grimsby in terms of his output. He missed an open goal, was a bit fortunate with the goal he scored at the end, the 5th one against Grimsby, but honestly both of them are good options. McAllister the same thing as well. I would rate these 2 a little bit more than McAllister, but honestly take your pick from the Brighton midfielders. They're all good. You've got Stupinian at the back. Ferguson's a decent cheap forward, although I wouldn't go for him in FPL, and not to mention Steele, who should keep his spot as well for double game week 29. And I think with Brighton, they have so many good options all of a sudden. They've got multiple double game weeks as well. They've got 3 until the end of the season after game week 29, so you could have 2 or 3 Brighton players until the end of the season, irrespective of some tough fixtures coming up as well. And the final midfielder and another transfer for me for a -4 hit could be James Maddison in for Martin Odegaard, with two very favourable fixtures from an offensive perspective, and Maddison is by far the best Leicester asset in the game, especially with Iheanacho being dropped against Brentford. Now, a few alternatives include Harvey Barnes, who also looked very promising against Brentford, and he is capable of some big returns as well on occasion, but Maddison is the standout for me. He's been so consistent when he can actually build his fitness, stay fit, and also have a run of games going and have that match sharpness which he so needs, and I think he's only going to get better and better in this run-in. The only concern with him is injuries down the line. That would be the only thing I'd be worried about with Maddison, and I think there is a big debate here this week in terms of Maddison versus Bruno Fernandes, and I think Bruno in isolation is the better pick, but he's also more expensive, so it depends on your transfer plans going forwards. Do you need to bring Haaland back in 30, and a few other factors like that, but I'm happy to go for Maddison and also for Bruno Fernandes. They could both be coming in for me in Game Week 29, and at the moment, at this stage of the week, I'm currently favouring Maddison for my own squad, but I think for most people where maybe money isn't an issue, I'd probably favour Bruno Fernandes instead. And the fifth midfielder, by the way, you'll see it very soon, is Bukayo Saka. So as you'll see, I have a very strong bench boost squad for Game Week 29. I'm happy I still have the bench boost actually, which is something I rarely say in this game. After Game Week 29 though, I'll start to maybe take some money off the bench and put it all into the starting 11. That just leaves two forwards in the starting 11 to complete this team, starting with Ivan Toney. As I mentioned earlier in this video, if he gets a yellow card against Brighton, he'll be suspended for the second game in 29 against Manchester United. So ideally, he would get the yellow just afterwards, really. But if I had to pick, of course, it'd be the Man United fixture. He's suspended for Game Week 30. And either way, my plan is to sell Ivan Toney to Erling Haaland. But a yellow card against Brighton, if I were to keep Ivan Toney, that would be absolutely detrimental and very frustrating, especially when you've got Kai Havertz with 2 home games. You've got Isak as well, who's got some good long-term fixtures, a potential double as well against Brighton in 31, and a few other forwards here and there. Of course, I've still got Harry Kane, but my plan is to get Erling Haaland back in, keep Harry Kane if possible, and it would be Ivan Toney making way in Game Week 30. He's definitely sellable in Game Week 29 because of the suspension risk, but if he can go through that Brighton game unscathed, I think he could do really well this week. So it's kind of counterproductive. Whether you sell Ivan Toney, that could backfire. If you keep him, it could also backfire. So it's a matter of priorities and whether you have other fires to put out, or you think you can make bigger improvements in the defence, goalkeeper position, or the midfield, and also whether you're playing the bench boost or not this week. The other forward in the starting 11 will be Ollie Watkins, and I think Aston Villa could do really well, score plenty of goals in both games. I don't expect clean sheets though, and that's why the likes of Tyrone Mings, who's been fantastic in recent weeks, I wouldn't go for him, but Buendia is a decent option in midfield, and Ollie Watkins is the clear standout throughout the whole Aston Villa ranks in Double Gameweek 29 and also going beyond Game Week 30 to the end of the season. So that is my starting 11, and I've also got Harry Kane on the bench. So now let me show you my entire bench and what I'm looking to bench boost with, as well as my captaincy plans for Double Gameweek 29. With just a -4 hit taken, I would have 13 double game week players, and the only single game week options I'd have include Bukayo Saka and Harry Kane, who have 22 and 23 goal contributions respectively, and they face Leeds at home and Everton away. The other two players on my bench include Raya and Botman with doubles, so this team should score well. It should see a green arrow, but you just never know, and I think the captaincy will also play a big part in terms of how big my green arrow potentially could be. But I'm also fearful because a lot of people around my rank will have a similar team, and also they will have good squads themselves, even if they have something a bit different. So it's not going to be easy. But having said all of that, despite everything that happened in Game Week 28, I am fairly optimistic, and I'm looking to captain Rashford, assuming he is fit, and I think he is. And my vice captaincy is currently on Mitoma. I think Rashford is the clear standout captaincy option in terms of those in my ranks. But you've got a few others maybe, like Bruno Fernandes, who's also an option. You could even include Maddison in the conversation as well, but Rashford's the one I trust the most, and that's where I got the armband on at the moment. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Who are you looking to captain as well? And now let me go to FPL.team, show you some brief transfer plans for Game Week 30 to bring Erling Haaland back in, of course, before wrapping up this video. The captaincy and the bench is certainly not finalised for Game Week 30. This is a rough plan after all, but I could bring Erling Haaland in for Ivan Toney, as well as Maddison and Shaw the week beforehand in 29, as I just showed you. And if I were to bring in Bruno Fernandes instead of Maddison for Odegaard, then I would not be able to afford Erling Haaland and Harry Kane, and it would be a case of selling Kane or Haaland in Game Week 30. So that's how the transfer of Bruno Fernandes versus Maddison could play a part. And ideally, I would keep Harry Kane, at least for the next few fixtures. And he's ideally actually a season keeper as well because of his consistency. And the captaincy would be between the likes of Rashford, Haaland, and a few others there as well. So that's something I'm yet to finalise, of course, and I still have to finalise my transfers to 29, but it's good to look ahead as well to future weeks and plan how to get these key assets in, because I do want Haaland back, that's for sure. Even in Game Week 29, I am open to the idea of selling Ivan Toney to Haaland, but of course, I might end up just keeping Ivan Toney and letting things slide, see how it plays out, and ultimately bring Haaland back in 30 anyway. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, what you're looking to do for Double Gameweek 29 and the rest of the season, and also your captaincy plans for 29, 30, and anything else you want to discuss. Be sure to let me know, and thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check the links in the description below for the Patreon, channel memberships, Discord server, and also to Sorare if you want another fantasy game to broaden your horizons. Be sure to check that out, and you can earn coins and currency just by playing the game and having some fun there as well. You don't need to spend any money to get started. Thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate all of you that support the channel with the super chats, the patrons, the channel members, all of that stuff, subscribers as well, and I'll see you very soon for the next few videos and live streams.